Thank you. Thank you very much. We can take our seat, Shannon.
How are you? Fine. Are you going to behave yourself this time?
No.
The new year.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and again, welcome. Our apology again for bringing you here on Sunday. Wanted to bring you yesterday, but we were told all of you are in heaven. So it's fun by your request that we are meeting today. We were supposed to be yesterday. I will hand over to the minister. The minister will go through remarks and then we will take some questions. Morning, Minister.
Morning. To everybody, and thank you for responding to our meet with yourselves today. We thought this would be a suitable time to get your attention, having gone through your deadline for today's stories, to engage with you on a number of issues. Primarily, we have been we've had to deal with two elections within the SADC region, and we have not been able to engage with you on the matter. But also, we had an issue with the DRC's, the discussion in the United Nations Security Council over the DRC election. So we used our position within the United Nations Security Council to ask for a postponement. It led to much discussion, and when the elections did happen, the accusations that came fast and furious were that South Africa is quiet. The reason we were quiet is precisely because we had asked the United Nations Security Council to allow the elections to be, the results of the elections to be pronounced. That discussion has since happened, and we will get to that very soon and have a discussion on that. We think it was a very useful discussion at the United Nations Security Council, and we are glad that we asked for a postponement, because by the time that that discussion did take place, it was a very fruitful discussion with everybody there, having a central agreement around a number of things which we will get into. So for today, we will be discussing the SADC's position around the DRC, the SADC's position around Madagascar, and a number of other issues that have cropped up. We have intermittently been issuing out statements, but we felt that we should bring these matters to you just in case you missed those statements. We have about 5 statements that have been issued, one by the chair of the AU, the other by the chair of the SADC organ, President Lungu, one by President Cyril Ramaphosa, one by the foreign ministers of SADC, and one by the observer mission of SADC on the issue of the DRC. Now, it would be for you to indicate whether you'd like me to start with the DRC or whether you'd like me to start with a shorter one on Madagascar. Did I hear you say Madagascar? Yeah. No?
DRC.
But by the time you're done with the DRC, you'll be gone. So you will not even have the benefit of the other discussions. Madagascar. Okay. Let's go to Madagascar. Madagascar, as you know, and ourselves have had a very long history of engagement. The people of Madagascar supported us as a country throughout our time in exile, and we've had relations with them dating back to the time of President Madiba. And you do know also that when we had a previous experience of fallout in an election period, we were requested by the Madagascar government to host the former President Ravalomanana, who stayed with us for a period of 5 years. We've been very active in the run-up to the elections in Madagascar. We had a team that was sent there both by myself and the President, consisting of Ibrahim and Rolf Meyer, who've been actively engaging with the various parties in Madagascar, and our ambassador there, and the Electoral Commission there. You do know that we did have a bit of a crisis there when the Constitutional Court almost rendered, the current president there, President Henry, in a few days would have been illegal. So we rushed over there, and we have since been very much present on the ground in Madagascar. The elections was held in, current elections was held in Madagascar, and there was a dispute, and there was a need to have a runoff of that particular election. And in the second runoff, which was run on the 19th of December, we then continued with the election, and we have since come to the finding through the Electoral Commission there that the winner in this particular case was President Rajulina. The last time I had engagement with you, you'll remember that we had predicted that the person who was leading that particular election was President Ravalomanana. However, when the election was concluded, it was President Rajulina who won the election. Thereafter, we have found that the situation is stable, and the people of Madagascar seem to have accepted the results, and we're very happy with the input that South Africa has contributed to the situation in Madagascar, and we would like to congratulate the people of Madagascar. We would like to congratulate President Rajulina for winning decisively in this particular election. We can now close on Madagascar and get to the one that you came from. On the issue of the DRC, as I indicated, we refrained from making any comments, and we got a backlash from a number of you while we were quiet. We've now decided to break that silence, because that which we were waiting for, which is the discussion around the United Nations Security Council, has happened. We will provide you with detailed inputs from the various people who attended the United Nations Security Council, and there is unanimity around one thing which is absolutely important for the people of the DRC, that to the extent that it was possible, the election was peaceful. Every single person who spoke congratulated the people of the DRC for a peaceful election. Now, when you consider the sheer size of the DRC, when you consider that there were more than 600 political parties participating, 12,000 candidates for the parliamentary election, and quite a number of people also contesting the presidency. When you consider the violence that we've experienced in the past in the DRC, when you consider also the violence that has been visited on the people of the DRC from time to time in the eastern part, when you consider also that a decision had to be taken by the WHO that those areas that were affected by Ebola should not go and vote, and you consider the fact that this is the first comprehensive election in the DRC since its independence, when you consider the rudimentary infrastructure there, when you consider that they had an innovative way in which they were going to deal with the sheer number of candidates there, I think that CENI needs to be congratulated. The people of the DRC need to be congratulated for their patience, for the way in which they handled themselves, and there may have been one or two incidents, but it was a peaceful outcome, and we are very happy with that. We were very apprehensive that perhaps we might deteriorate into another civil war in that area. You do know that South Africa has played a very important role in the DRC from the time of Madiba, making sure that the former governments of the DRC do recognize that they need to move into a democratic space, to the time when President Mbeki invited the people of the DRC, the contending parties, to come to Sun City, and we spent about 2 years with them trying to make sure that we can provide the people of the DRC with a modicum of democracy. And we learned quite a lot from them as well, and we've taken up some of the practices that we took up from them. This therefore was a test of how far that democratic process, which was cemented at the Sun City and thereafter cemented by the government that was in place under President Kabila, and what kind of democracy it has created. We are mindful of the fact that in the period between the time that we had the discussion and a transitional agreement at Sun City, a number of preparatory arrangements have been made to create a democratic dispensation for the people of the DRC. Chief amongst them was the creation of SENI, which was the ultimate authority to decide on the election, a constitution that allowed for legislation, that allowed for the elections to take place. And for us, when we look back at this, one of the most important things was that finally the DRC did go to an election. From the time that I got into the space as Minister of Foreign Affairs, the urgency from people was there must be an election in the DRC. President Kabila was urged from time to time by SADC members to make sure that there is an election. He committed himself. The election was provided for. We wanted some certainty that he would not stand. And finally, when we were in SADC in Namibia under the chairpersonship of President Geingob, he did commit that he was standing down. And these for us are markers of how far we have gone in making sure that we as a region are able to protect the essence of a democracy. Now we have been given a report by the observer mission, which was led by the chair of SADC observer mission, Foreign Minister Malanje. And I wanted to just read some of the observations that he makes, because these are very important indeed. He indicates that he gave his report on the 2nd of January. And he says our final report as an observer mission to SADC will be ready within 30 days of the final results. And it will cover the post-election phase, which embraces results, management, announcements, post-election adjudication processes. So what I'm trying to do is to contextualize the fact that we're still in the process of observing what is happening. The final observer mission report has not yet been given. 30 days from the 2nd of January would be the 2nd of February. We expect, therefore, that by that time they will observe the entirety of the election, and they'll give us a definitive report on that. Over and above that, he indicates that when they got to the DRC, they needed to find that the very framework from which the elections would be conducted was one that was conducive to a democratic process. And he says that the Constitution of the Democratic Republic of Congo allowed for the elections, which were conducted under the electoral law governing the electoral system processes, in particular the law of organization of presidential, legislative, and provincial provincial elections, and also which has been variously amended to create what we have as the SENI now. He indicates the difficulty that they had. He indicates the number of observers that SADC took to the place, and how they were deployed across the place in the DRC. A copy of this will be made available for you so that you understand what the outcome of our own observers was. In the end, he says that in the light of the fact that this was the most problematic, challenging election that could possibly have happened in Africa, this is what they were urging. that SENI and the government are urged to consider and implement the logistical and budgetary requirements to facilitate the voting of the diaspora, of people who are outside, because this is what they observe perhaps could improve some of the functionality of the system. And the government is urged to review the electoral law in order to allow the armed forces and the Congolese National Police to vote in the elections, which is not the case right now. And SENI is urged to consider making the voters list accessible to the public in a timely manner. However, the conclusion is that as a preliminary statement and considering the range of challenges around these elections, the observer mission observed that the 2080 presidential, legislative and provincial elections were comparatively well managed and the voting process proceeded relatively smoothly, enabling the majority of the people of the DRC to exercise their right to vote. The observer mission recognizes the public health and security challenges affecting the eastern part of the DRC, and therefore understood that perhaps it was necessary to allow the WHO to declare that these should not be allowed to vote, especially those that had Ebola in it. They further congratulate MONUSCO for the role that it played, and in accordance with the SADC principles and guidelines governing the elections, our final report will be issued 30 days, as I have indicated. But finally, they conclude it was a peaceful, relatively peaceful election. We have since then had set statements given by President Lungu, who has indicated that the Southern African Development Community welcomes the release of the preliminary results in the 19th December. Sorry. No. This one is the wrong file. However, he issued a statement, while I look for it, he issued a statement to say that they congratulated the people of the DRC and for the peacefulness of the outcome, and he was hoping that very soon SENI would be able to release the results of the election. Our president also issued a statement requesting that SENI fast-track the pronouncement of the election and made sure that this was made public and it was given to yourselves. Now, in interacting with the various stakeholders in the DRC, SENI was able to explain something that was some kind of response to both President Lungu and President Ramaphosa. They indicated to us that they were busy with the provincial legislature, which included something like 15,000 candidates, and they had prepared themselves to use an electronic system for counting. However, the opposition parties had vetoed this, and they were required to use a manual system of counting, which took longer than they expected. So they were still counting at the time at which everybody was in anticipation that the results would be given out. President Lungu had indicated that the community of SADC welcomes the release of the Mabaya, this is Madagascar. The Southern African Development Community welcomes the provisional results of the presidential election under the combined presidential, legislative and provincial elections. SADC congratulates the people of the Congo and SENI for conducting the elections. SADC urges all parties, candidates and their supporters to exercise patience and refrain from any acts of violence while the process of releasing the results of the elections is being conducted. We have noted, and I'm sure you have noted, that the people of the DRC have in fact responded to this. They have been patient, they have been waiting. Even with the people who have been unhappy with the results, they have taken to the procedural way of recording their unhappiness We're happy to recognize the fact that due processes that are allowed by the Constitution have now been taken up by Fayola, who is contesting that perhaps the results might not be a true reflection of what he thinks should have come out of that. The good thing is he has lodged his complaint, and he will be taking the constitutional route of going through the courts. And we applaud that. And we applaud the people of the DRC for being patient while the counting continues. At the United Nations Security Council, all the people who made their comments there repeated the same congratulatory message to everybody. I wanted to read to you the final statement that was given by our representative Jerry Madzila in the United Nations Security Council. He says, "The DRC has come a long way in its quest for peace and security. The elections that have taken place will be the first democratic transfer of power in the country's history. The commitment of the Congolese people to this process should be commended. We therefore call on the international community and this council in particular to continue to support this process with a balanced and measured approach." Underlined. We have also noted the statements that come from the representative of France, and he issues too the same kind of sentiment to say all of us should refrain from any kind of inflammatory statements and await the results that will be published soon. And he congratulates the CENI, and he says the elections are a historic moment for the Democratic Republic of the Congo, able to lead for the first time to a peaceful alternation of power in the history of the country and strengthening of its democratic institutions. This would be the culmination of a cycle that began at Sun City 16 years ago. The DRC has taken important steps in recent weeks towards this goal. France stands with the nation and the Congolese people to accompany them along this path while respecting the democratic processes of the Congo and the democratic choices of the Congo. In this context, France will propose to member states of the Council to rapidly adopt a statement to the press which welcomes the conduct of the vote, calls on all parties to calmly engage in the next steps of the process, and invites them to build consensus at national level in respect of the law and the service of people. That kind of sums up the different views that came out of the discussion that was held at the United Nations. Of course, you do know that the Catholic Church had indicated its own reservations about the outcome of the results. They presented their report to the Security Council. The chair of the SADC monitoring observer mission presented his own report. The representative of the United Nations in the DRC presented her report, and the outcome of that is captured in the statements both by our representative and by the French government. And so we are conveying this to you, that we await the final results, and we also congratulate the people of the DRC. We congratulate in particular Mr. Fayola for the way in which he has taken the right route to go through the courts to lodge his complaint around what he feels is an unfair outcome of the elections. We will take that, and we hope that anybody else who has any problem with the way that the elections were conducted will take that route. Ultimately, all of us would like to see that the DRC continues on this peaceful trend. For us in South Africa, with being with the people of the DRC, it is in our interest to make sure that we encourage them to do all that needs to be done in the peaceful way that they've conducted the election, and we will be there with them to support them all the way. Thank you very much. That is all on the DRC matter. The final matter that I would like to bring to your attention is we are aware of the fact that a South African national Mr. Honeycomb has been held by the Mozambican government, and we have had questions about what it is that we're doing about it. Our ambassador, ambassador in Mozambique, has managed to locate Mr. Honeycomb and has communicated both with the family and ourselves where he is being held, and he has made himself available to interact with Mr. Honeycomb so that we can give all the necessary consular support to him. I believe those are all the issues that were outstanding that we wanted to communicate with yourselves. Any other matter, we will respond to your questions as and when you have a question. We would like to end there because we would like to have time to respond to your questions.
Okay, we'll start in front here and go. Start this next door. Just name and media house and then welcome.
Good morning, Bruce Spector, Daily Maverick. In light of your statements so far, and in light of the reservations that... Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
In light of the Catholic Church's reservations about the election and its results and difficulties in the tabulations, how much credence do you put on the Catholic Church's comments? And why are they, and how are they going to be taken into consideration in the way you respond as
the country?
Correct.
Okay, Sophie, you take the desk.
Sophie Mkwena from the SABC. I just want to find out, Minister, the DRC, it looks like the current chair of the organ on defense of politics, President Edgar Lungu, has issued a latest statement calling for a government of national unity. How far true are the reports? Are you aware? Have you been briefed? Do you have that statement? And what's your response to the call for government of national unity? Quite strong, saying that the objection is too loud, and to ensure that there's unity in the DRC, the best option is the government of national unity. And the last question is, in terms of those who are in exile, like Moses Kakumi, and of course John Pierre Bembe, who was in Belgium, the two who couldn't contest, who are supporting Fayola. Have you, as SADC, engaged them? Are they willing to work with the Tshisekedi? Are they prepared to sit down and talk? And who's the envoy of South Africa to the DRC currently?
Take the third one.
Who is the envoy for South Africa to the DRC currently? Normally there's an envoy for all these hotspots. Do you have one now? I know the deputy president is South Sudan. And,
Okay, we'll deal with those two. Okay, we'll take that. Okay, that's fine. You can come.
Okay, why don't we answer this one? Okay. Daily Maverick, the reason why the United Nations Security Council took the unusual route of having a discussion on the DRC was at the instance of the Catholic Church requesting to make its own observation. And we agreed with that because we wanted to hear all sides so that we can exercise our own judgment, having all the information available. However, the United Nations Security Council decided that to have a balanced view, they needed to call in CENI itself to give their own view. They needed to call in the observer mission and the representative of the United Nations in the DRC. So, within that context, the United Nations Security Council was able to weigh all the views that were presented there by all the people who were running the elections and had close contact with the running of the elections. How much credence should I put there? I think that it is a matter that we're discussing in the United Nations Security Council, and that is where it will remain. I will be guided by the outcome of that discussion. But from the statements that came out on Friday, it seemed to us that all of us were concerned about making sure that we can hold the peace that has held the people of the DRC together. And any objection that might come, either from the church itself, if it has any legal standing, will go through the courts. Any objection that comes from Fayola has already been lodged with the courts and will await that. It would be very premature of me to declare my own view about a matter that is still under discussion. We are members of the National Security Council, and therefore it is important for us at all times to exercise caution in what we say. We do not represent ourselves, we represent the continent at the National Security Council. So I'll be guided by those discussions, and we were able to link into the discussions by video link, and we were able to hear everybody's comments around the issue of the DRC. And that is what will be my own conclusion on that matter. I don't have a personal view to express. I'm a member of the Security Council. That is what I will express when they express themselves. And the issue of President Geingob, between the time when we had asked for the discussion in the United Nations Security Council and the final discussion of the matter in the United Nations Security Council, I don't think anybody in my office slept for more than 2 hours, because we had to communicate, on a regular basis with the time differences and make sure that we are in telephonic communication with all the foreign ministers of SADC, with the heads of the regions. We invited President Lungu to come and brief President Ramaphosa. I had extensive discussions with the foreign minister of Zambia, and therefore, by the time that President Geingob, as the chair of SADC, was issuing that statement, it is a common view from most of the people that have had anything to say about this, that seeing that there seems to have been an amicable resolution of an alliance between Tshisekedi and Kabila, it would make sense that this would take into account the Fayola group as well. But I think that is just an idea that is put forward by SADC. It is not compelling anybody to go that way, but it would seem to us that it would be the most logical way, and therefore President Geingob speaks on behalf of all of SADC when he expresses that view, that if we have the various parties coming together, we will have a better outcome. I want to take you back a few months back. The opposition parties who were in exile, some of them operating within the Congo, had come to South Africa and met with the ANC. And the ANC had urged them to find a way in which they could find some commonality and have one person representing them as the opposition, so that we are able to minimize any differences in those people who would like to make sure that they stand in the election. This was followed up by the team that we had dispatched to Madagascar in the form of Rolf Meyer and Ibrahim, trying to persuade the opposition parties to come together. It didn't succeed. The Western countries that were in support of this invited the opposition parties of the DRC to come to Geneva and discuss this, and we didn't find any commonality of one opposition leader standing for all of them. But if this works and we have a government of national unity, it would be a great step that would have been taken by SADC. It would be a great step that would be taken by the Congolese people, but we don't want to preempt that, nor do we want to take away the rights of of Fayola to go to the courts and contest the outcome. It is his right to do that, and we would like to encourage him to go through the courts so that by the time that we get to the end of this, everybody has used every avenue that is available to them. Who represents South Africa as an envoy to the DRC? We have an ambassador there, and at the moment the ambassador acts as our representative there. You will remember that we did ask President Mbeki to be our envoy to the Great Lakes, and you will also remember that all of you were very gleefully reporting that President Kabila had rejected the idea of President Mbeki being an envoy, and we left it at that. So we do not have a direct representative or an envoy to the DRC from South Africa, but we have an embassy there. And we are dependent on the SADC community for engagement on the matters of the DRC. I have with me here the DDG Mxolisi Nkosi, who is our representative on matters that have to do with the United Nations Security Council and all other global matters. And he might want to add a few words too in response. I have with me the DG, who has been providing the backbone of all the work that we've been doing, running around, and he is claiming overtime now for the work that all of us have been doing. And I'd like to claim my overtime too to the President. DG, do you have any comment? Okay, we will take more questions.
Yes, Andrew Hardy from the BBC News. You just said, and I quote you, if this works and we have a government of national unity, it would be a great step. Is that your position? Is that SADC's position? Are you calling for a government of national unity?
No.
If not, why are you bringing it up and endorsing it at this stage? Aren't you
undermining? No, please, I want to stop you right there. I was responding to a question about what do I think about a statement that came from President Gaingo. This was a question from the BBC, and I was responding to that. SABC. And I was responding to that. It was not an initiative from ourselves, and I've emphasized that we would like to see Fayola going through the courts. What we've been calling for is that there must be a constructive way in which we resolve this without resorting to anything outside of the Constitution. It would be in his best interest that he goes through the courts and gets an outcome out of that. However, from our own experience in South Africa, it might just solve a problem if that is the ultimate end and they buy into it. It is not our proposal. We are responding to a question. And please, I would like it reported that way. We would not want you in any way to report out of context what we're saying. It is a very fluid situation we're dealing with. We have a very responsible job at the United Nations Security Council, and therefore what has been asked has been responded to. President Gaingob would have proposed this possibly as the only solution to ensure that we are able to move forward, all of us.
Isn't it premature then to call it a great step?
For us, as South Africans, we've been through that step. And it worked for us. If it works for the DRC, it is for the people of the DRC to conclude. And it is for the people of the DRC to take that decision.
In that context, you mentioned earlier fast and furious accusations at the UN Security Council earlier on. Could you give us a flavour of that?
No. I said fast and furious in the social media that South Africa was quiet. And that would include yourselves. Everybody would have been getting their information from yourselves that South Africa is not speaking. And I was explaining why it was that we were not able to speak, because we had requested that we hold up a discussion of the United Nations Security Council until Friday. We can't, therefore, on one hand, stop people from discussing a matter at the proper forum, and we ourselves are shooting our mouths out there.
And if you could just address the broader point then, and you'll be familiar with this criticism of your approach, of SADC's approach, that in some way this is a repetition of the so-called soft bigotry of low expectations, that you're focusing obsessively on the peaceful nature of these elections and ignoring the fact that they may have been stolen.
No, I have no idea that they've been stolen. You're making an accusation which is completely out of order, because we are trying to make sure that the people of the DRC stand by what the Seni has pronounced, and if they have if they've got anything that they would like to present to either the courts or anybody else, that they stand by that. It is not right that you should come here and make those kind of accusations against. No, it wasn't a question. It was not a question. It was an accusation. We are very happy that this has been a peaceful election. Extremely happy. I was Minister of Defense in 2011. I was in the DRC assisting the SADC community, making sure that we can keep peace in the DRC. It was a very violent onslaught just before election. Right now, we do not have that, and we're extremely grateful. We as the African continent deserve to have peace like the rest of any other continent, and we're very happy about that. We've been congratulating the people of the DRC for that peace. Peace is an essential part of a democratic process. Thank you.
Okay. A question on the same line.
Thank you very much. Alex Willing from Reuters. Could I just ask you once more about this this government and national unity thing? I'll just say how I understand what you said, and you tell me if it's right. So SADC is saying that if there were to be a government of national unity in the DRC, that could be a solution to the problems about the election. And that President Geingob of Namibia, he's not calling for that as an immediate step that needs to be taken, but he's calling for it at least to be considered.
Yes.
Given the fact that Mr. Fayulu has gone to the courts,
yes,
and the election is still in some way contested, the final result. So it's just it's something that SADC is offering for consideration, but not.
Yes.
Not as a firm proposal.
Well, SADC has no right to make any decision over what is happening in the DRC. SADC is only a regional body where we work together and make sure that we work together towards silencing the guns by 2020, which is almost on the doorstep, by making sure that all our objectives are followed through by each one of us, making sure that we can give support. And we have common goals, we have common requirements as a developing community, and we work together very closely. When the issue of urging the DRC to go to the election was first mooted, it was SADC that took it up. And President Kabila was required to come to SADC at the Double Troika meeting held in Angola. And we asked him bluntly, are the elections going to be conducted? Because there was a lot of skepticism about whether they will be. And he gave his confirmation, yes, they will happen. They will happen in December, and the date then was the 23rd. He indicated further that he did not require any support financially or otherwise from anybody, that they as a DRC would like to have an independent, truly independent election. They would finance their own election. And we have been keeping a watch on all of this. When we had a meeting handing over to a new chair in Namibia, we did ask Kabila to declare that he is not standing, and he did declare that he's not standing. So we can only advise that perhaps, in a spirit of the same kind of coming together that we had at the Sun City, perhaps in the spirit of moving forward and allowing the peace that we have in the DRC to maintain, it might not be a bad idea. We cannot impose it on the people of the DRC. However, it is not something that is being proposed now. It is something that is a possibility, given the fact that there seems to have been an agreement between Kabila and Tshisekedi. And it is something that we have been selling to the opposition parties for the longest time, to say you could come together and it would make life so much easier. This is something that the European partners to the DRC have been selling as well, to say, look, the opposition parties could come together and it would make it easier. But they were not determining the future, yes. But what they were saying is it would be a desirable end. I think what is being proposed now is it might be a desirable end in the end, that we have this, because the only other party that would perhaps be left out would be Fayola's party. And if that was given some kind of consideration, we might have a peaceful and an acceptable compromise moving forward. This is something that we in South Africa have experienced, and we keep selling it to anybody who cares to listen. It was not the easiest thing to go to bed with the National Party. For us, this was the enemy. We had fought for many years, but the outcome is what we have now. And at that time, it was a bitter pill, and it is not something that we wanted. It wasn't the first choice, but we allowed ourselves to think beyond what was the here and now, think of the future, what we could achieve in the future, and we went through that. And we sell our experiences wherever possible. We sell our experiences of the TRC whenever we're called upon. We sell our experiences of how we ended a terrible situation in South Africa whenever we're called upon. And we will fall back on our own experiences from time to time, but we're not using it as a panacea for everybody. We are not determining it for anybody, but President Geingob has indicated that this might be a way in which we solve this. The people of the DRC have been through a great deal of pain. They too, like everybody else, are in need of some respite, of some peace. It's a very rich country. They would provide energy for the whole world if they were to put that dam to productive use. It would put the world in a better place, and we would like to see an end to what has been going on. And we believe that we are on the precipice of a new dawn for that particular country. Whatever is the outcome of the Constitutional Court in relation to Fayola, ultimately we want to see peace.
Okay.
Minister Peter Bush is also from the Daily Maverick. Could I ask you something? There were reports yesterday that the troops or the security forces of the Congo, of the DRC, are actually surrounded the home of Fayola, thus preventing him from submitting his challenge to the results. I mean, you've been heavily emphasizing and even congratulating him on the fact that he's done so. I may be wrong, but I'm not sure that he has so far been actually able to table his.
He has.
He has
formally done so.
Today?
Yesterday.
After the troops withdrew, or what?
I'm not sure about the troops. Right. Yeah, okay, but he has finally submitted, and that is now under consideration by the Constitutional Court.
Okay. Now, I also ask in relation to Rwanda,
yes,
how the reconciliation process between the two countries.
Why don't we finish what we were dealing with? Rwanda was not part of that. We will come back to that if we have the time. Let's conclude the matters that we brought forward to you, which is the matter of Madagascar, which is the matter of the DRC, and the South African prisoner in Mozambique.
And now is TV Mozambique, follow-up for that question, issue of South Africa in Mozambique. On the 1st of January, DIRCO released a press statement saying that
they work hard, hey? On the 1st of January, they were already issuing a press statement.
In fact, it's the press release that I've got.
Okay.
Citing the minister that would like to engage law enforcement agencies in investigating allegations against Hancock in Mozambique.
Mm-hmm.
I think today is more or less now about 2 weeks. Have you heard any feedback about investigations? Two, on the 29th of December last year, a Mozambican former Minister of Finance was arrested at the airport, Overtown Airport. He's now in the process of court hearings at the Cape Town Park. So the Mozambicans are complaining that South Africa did not inform officially them about the arrest, about the warrant issued by the American. And the third and last question from myself. it was supposed to be binational between South Africa and Mozambique last year. We did not have it. Any comment on these three issues?
Okay. Today is Sunday. What is the date today?
13th.
13th. Tomorrow the president is in Mozambique, our president. And all these questions will be answered. Tomorrow.
On Monday.
The 14th. 14th, the president is in Mozambique.
For binational?
For all of these things. And you will be invited when they conclude their discussions, and they will be able to have responses to all of these questions. We ourselves have not had any report that I know of from the law enforcement agencies of our country around the issue of Mr. Honeycomb. However, we have made contact with the ambassador there has made contact with him. We are the people who found where he was, and we've since been able to inform the family as well. Ambassador is looking after Mr. Honeycomb, and we will deal with those matters as and when we have information on them. On the matter of the former Minister of Finance, the police, the security agencies acted on the request of Interpol. We have protocols that we have, which we have signed, and we are required to enforce those protocols whenever it is that we are requested to act on them. And this is what has happened in this particular case. We were requested to intercept the minister and make sure that Interpol has access to him, and that is what we did. If this was not communicated to the Mozambicans, I am certain it will be communicated tomorrow, but I'm not sure that it was not communicated. The media has been full of the story for a very long time, and we are in direct contact with the Mozambicans on a number of issues on a regular basis. They are our closest neighbor geographically. They've even built a bridge that takes us 30 minutes to get there. So it is not possible that we would not have informed them. But the president will be going to Mozambique tomorrow. Okay?
Hi, Minister. Thank you so much for your time. It's Kyle here from UNSC. Minister, I just want to get Pretoria's perspective. I mean, looking at the provisional results in the DRC. So, in terms of the validity of the results, you know, a lot of people have questioned the validity of the results. So, because we still await the full results being, publicized by the Electoral Commission, but what would be your observation, especially because now you have all these allegations swirling around that there was a pact between the outgoing leader and Mr. Tshisekedi. So what would be your observation to that? And maybe just before I let you go, Minister, just a quick one regarding the whole Mozambican issue with the arrest of the former minister. Mozambique is South Africa's strongest trading partner. So are you foreseeing any potential diplomatic fallout emanating from this particular incident, especially because Frelimo and ANC, the governing parties in these two neighboring countries, they have a lot in common. They've worked together, and it appears that the former minister is still a member of parliament. So surely if he's being arrested in South Africa, especially where he's detained at some point with 20 inmates where he was exposed to all sorts of health hazards. So surely that's quite a very concerning situation. So what would be your observation regarding any potential diplomatic fallout? Thank you.
Yes, I'll start with the last one. I don't know what health hazards would emanate from being imprisoned.
So at some point he was detained with like 20 inmates at Madagascar prison. So, and because there has been a court case.
Yes, but what would the health hazards be?
So, some of the inmates are smoking, so he doesn't smoke. So those are health issues.
Okay. Okay, we will look into that. I did not anticipate that there would be any health hazards around that. Yes, he is a member of parliament. However, he no longer has, where we would have been able to give protection to him is if he had diplomatic immunity. He did have diplomatic immunity when he was a minister, but he no longer has that. So we would not have a leg to stand on to deny the request from Interpol, having been given the information that we have been given to assist them in the investigation of this matter. But we will follow up on the 20 inmates and the possibility of any harm to the health of the minister. That has not been brought to our attention. No, we do not anticipate a fallout between ourselves and Mozambique, because Mozambique would have known about this matter. We have very good relations with Mozambique, and we would have been informing them on a regular basis. We have an embassy in Mozambique, and the Mozambicans would have been very quick to call on our ambassador to come and explain if they had any issues with the arrest of the minister, and if they were unhappy, they would have expressed their unhappiness. The meeting we have with the president of Mozambique is a meeting that has long been overdue. It's a normal meeting in the process of ensuring that our relations are kept as fluid as possible. And it takes me back to the BNC. The last binational commission we had was about 6 months ago. Okay, I'm informed by the DG that we should have had one, but it was rescheduled. And I'd like to inform you that it is not the only one that we have rescheduled. We rescheduled one with the DRC as well. We rescheduled one with Namibia and Zimbabwe. So we've had a very hectic 6 months, or however many months we've been in government, and we've had to attend to all sorts of things. So we've asked SADC countries to bear with us. The BNCs will be back on course as soon as everything is normalized. We've had interaction with each of these countries, and they have understood whenever we've asked for a suspension of the BNC, as it should have been held. But it's not the only country. I think it's probably one of 6 other countries where we've asked for the BNC to be suspended for a while.
Oh, thank you. Sharon? Thank you,
Anne.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Jeffrey York from the Toronto Globe and Mail. There was an unanswered question about the provisional results, and I'll just follow up on the provisional results in the DRC. One reason for the question is that the margin between the first and second candidates under the provisional results was less than 700,000 votes, and yet there was 1.25 million voters who were not allowed to vote in the 3 regions where there was no voting. So how much credibility do the provisional results have if the margin between the first and second candidates was much less than the number of disqualified voters?
Yeah. I don't know how you expect me to respond to that, because that is the matter that is being taken to the Constitutional Court. And everybody has welcomed the decision by Fayola to take that matter to the Constitutional Court, because for us, the most important thing is everybody must do whatever they do within the prescribed law, within the Constitution. What you're expressing to me is your own view, and you are free to hold that view, but I would like to await the normal procedures that are underway right now and hear from the Constitutional Court what the outcome is.
Okay. Okay, last one, please.
Tawal Suleiman from Channels TV, Lagos, Nigeria. My question is out of DRC, Madagascar. One, I want to ask about the President Ramaphosa's statement yesterday on immigration. Are we expecting a stricter visa regime? That is one. Secondly, in a month's time now, a stricter visa regime.
Oh, yes, okay, yes, okay.
Then secondly, in a month's time now, all focus will be on Nigerian national election. What is the Nigerian thought on Nigerian election? Thank you.
I think what we will need to do is give you President Ramaphosa's speech. What he was indicating is that we would need to ensure that people who operate within our country and have businesses in our country do so in a free environment, are protected by the law, and have all the necessary documentation to protect them. And therefore, we need to make sure that they have that documentation, that they are practicing what they do within the law. This will also help us ensure that our people do not vent their anger on people who are legitimately in the country and legitimately providing services to our people. No, we're not expecting stricter visa regulation, but we are expecting a rearrangement of how we deal with our visa regime. We've had a lot of complaints from people about how long it takes us to process our visas, and we have looked into the matter, and we have discovered that there is in fact an unseemly delay in the processing of visas, especially from the continent, for people who are coming to South Africa. We are saying to everybody South Africa is open for investment, and yet our visa regime is lagging behind. Government has put together an interministerial committee on migration to help us reform our visa regime. And at the moment we have a private company assisting us in processing the visas that are brought to us as at our embassies. This is a matter that has also caused a great deal of concern from our ambassadors, that they have no authority over whether or not people are given permission to come to our country, and yet they bear the brunt of the delays when the visa processing takes so long. So we're looking into that matter, and we would like to make sure that it is a more efficient visa system. It is one where people, especially of the African continent, feel that they are free to apply for it and get their responses on time and are able to come to South Africa. They're able to legitimately conduct their business and be protected by our laws by having the necessary documentation. But we do concede that the visa problem is a problem, and we're looking into that matter.
Okay. I'll take one last one. Yeah.
What was
Nigerian elections.
Nigerian elections.
Now you're doing exactly what the gentleman over there. We did say that we're going to restrict ourselves to these three precisely because of the enormity, and it is a here and now and present issue that is being discussed. By the time it reaches the United Nations Security Council, it's a high priority matter. That is why we decided to use the Sunday morning to come and brief you about the processes that are underway and the various statements that have been issued, the various consultations that have gone on, so that you know that we're not keeping quiet because we are, choosing to be aloof from this. But if we could just stick to those three, that would help. At another time, we will come back and we will come back to the Nigerian matter.
Okay. We are closing. Peter, is it still on DRC?
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I ask you, doesn't the fact that you are supporting the notion of a government of national unity...
No, Peter, I did not support the notion. I said... No.
You argued in favor?
No. I'm talking about our own experience. I was responding to a question, and that is what I have been repeating. This is something that comes from a statement from President Geingob, right? And I was expressing a view of any of the South Africans who are looking on, because we've been through that. If I were to talk about the male species, you would be in a better position to talk about the male species because you're one and you've experienced that. If anybody here is got the right to talk about women and the problems of women and discrimination of women, it would be women themselves, because women experience it on a regular basis. I was talking about our experience. I was indicating that whenever we have the opportunity and we're intervening anyway, we do have at the back of our mind the possibility that we have been through much worse than what other people have been through. And we sell an idea sometimes when we have the opportunity. We had the people of the DRC come to South Africa and sit down over a protracted period of 2 years. And we did that because we've been through the same problem. We have benefited from other countries doing exactly what we're doing to solve the problem that we had in South Africa. We would not on our own have done it without the support or the pressure from other African countries notably Zambia, Tanzania, and all of those people who were talking to us officially and unofficially to say, you might consider doing this. And therefore, what I was saying is, we have done it. If ultimately that is what happens, it might work out in the same way as it worked out to us. It was a horrendous proposition when it was made to us, and that is what I am reflecting on. But with hindsight, we took the right decision. We're not prescribing anything to anybody, absolutely, and I've been very emphatic about that.
So the idea of the government of national unity implies that the results are not absolutely credible, so you need to incorporate...
No, I am not. No, I am not. I'm not implying that. I have said over and over that Fayola has taken his response to the to the provisional results to the Constitutional Court, and we're happy that he is doing that, because the Constitutional Court ultimately is the only arbiter of this particular problem. But if in the end he wins or doesn't win, whichever way that they have a way of unifying the people of the DRC, finding some accommodation for everybody like we did. Perhaps in the future it is something that they might want to consider. Maybe this is what President Geingob is talking about. But he would be the only person to authoritatively respond to his statement. I was purely trying to put across what I think might have been at the back of their minds when they were making these suggestions. But it is by no means us trying to push them into that particular situation, nor does it imply that we are accepting that the results were not credible. The only people who can declare the results is Seni. That is what the Constitution of the DRC says. That is what was committed to by the United Nations Security Council.
On Hanakon, if I may, your statement of the 1st of January seemed to imply that you agreed with the Mozambican authorities that this guy is a jihadist, which on the face of it just seems so unlikely. You know, a South African guy who's a hunter, he's a chartered fisherman, he's got some sort of wildlife operation going down there. I mean, does it seem credible that you'd be supporting a jihadist cause?
We're not talking about what is possible and what is not possible here. What we're doing is we have a responsibility to find out what is happening to a citizen of South Africa in another country, and that is the route that we're taking. We're not making any judgments. We are taking the right route to make sure that we understand. And if we feel at the end of that explanation, if it is given that we do not agree with the assessment, we will express it in the right way through the right channels. It would be extremely unfortunate for us to be making statements about Mozambique when in fact Mozambique has made it possible for us to engage with them very directly. Okay?
Minister, just a brief one here. From the 1st of January, obviously you took that very enormous task of being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. So I'm just trying to understand from your point of view, what are you hoping to achieve over the next 2 years? What are you hoping to see as a legacy of Pretoria, being given such a very, very huge task, especially in light of what we've seen with the multilateral institutions under siege? Thank you.
Well, multilateral institutions are under siege from a few people, but generally when we are together at the United Nations General Assembly and at the United Nations Security Council, we bind ourselves to those particular multilateral foundations that we are all party to. They are under siege perhaps in the public domain, but we're still keeping the course. What did we hope to achieve? We hoped to represent the African continent. We were supported by the entire African continent to serve at the United Nations Security Council, and we accepted this because we already, by that time, were possibly very familiar with the issues. We had the necessary infrastructure to support us to do that, and we felt that we needed to put across a particular perspective from the African continent that we would like a reform of the United Nations Security Council. We would like the United Nations Security Council to restructure itself so that we have regional representatives and we have some form of equality at the United Nations. And we also are mindful of the fact that more than 60%, they grow by almost every year. 60% of the matters that serve before the United Nations Security Council are African matters. And we believe that we should be there to be part of the solution than have somebody else solving those problems for us. So we made ourselves available, and we think that we are already doing quite, I want to congratulate our people out there, the United Nations Security Council, because from where we are, we haven't slept much. The three of us are dealing with the matter of the matters at hand, and I can imagine how busy they are. But we took that responsibility because we think that it is the right thing to do, and we think that we will be able to represent Africa with all the with all the infrastructure that we have, and we want to do our best. We also want to introduce a number of things which were mentioned by our representative at the United Nations Security Council, that we believe that when we come across a situation like the one we have in the DRC, which is quite different from the one that President Geingob might have proposed. The proposal that South Africa put out there is that the United Nations might consider sending a team of reconciliation. I can't remember what the technical term is.
Mediators. Of
mediators to the DRC to see that we have an amicable solution to the problem. That is our official position as a country, and it was put across by our representative. He went further and indicated something that we are very passionate about, that we should send, in those mediators, we should make sure that we send a team of women, because we believe from the experience that we have in solving the problems of the DRC, that the women component of the mediators was a very powerful force that was used, and we want to make sure that the United Nations can take advantage of that. Women are nurturers, as opposed to people who are very quick to destroy, which is a male matter. Excuse me being very patronizing about this, but we truly believe that when women enter a space of mediation, the outcome is so much better than if we leave it to men. They have a particular inherent compassion in them that makes their work in mediating so much better. And we've been pushing this for the Security Council, and we've been pushing this for any mediation, that there should be a component of women. Happily, we've been joined by Germany and Belgium in this view, and we would like to make it part and parcel of any mediation that the United Nations Security Council unleashes. So our position is we would like the UN to send a mediating team to the DRC so that whenever the results are announced and there is an outcome of the security of the Constitutional Court, there is a team of mediators there to ensure that we can keep calm.
BBC, you've been raising both your hands and you are able to see it. What's the name? Is it still on DRC?
It is still on DRC.
Okay, you are able to see it. Okay, that's fine.
Respectfully, we understand what you're saying and what you're not saying about the government of national unity, and I think we all appreciate it.
No, you can't understand what I'm not saying because I haven't said it. You can only understand what I have said.
You're making clear in your answer to me what you were saying.
No, I'm not making clear in what I have not said. Okay. You can only take what I have said. Okay.
I'm sorry, this is going to be different. I think what some of us may be trying to understand is when this issue comes up, the national unity issue even comes up, and you talk about South Africa's example, some people might look to what is a democratic election in a large and, as we know, traumatized, problematic country, but see the comparison that you make with the end of apartheid to be a very different thing.
Absolutely, but the point that I was making was trying to unpack President Geingob's thinking. I was not imposing it on the DRC, nor were we prescribing it for the DRC. What I was saying is, having come from an awful past, when it was proposed to us, it was too awful to consider. But having experienced it, maybe as a final solution when all else has been sorted out, it might be the only way. When we had discussions with the opposition parties, that is what everybody in the world was trying to say to the opposition parties: come together and you would have a better chance. So I am not saying anything outside of that. What South Africa has put on the table, which is our official position, is whatever happens, we would like a mediating team dispatched by the United Nations Security Council. We have added to that we would like a battalion of women with that mediating team to make sure that we can keep the peace in the DRC. However, the question having been asked by SABC about President Geingob, I cannot presume to speak on his behalf. I was only indicating our own experience that when that possibility was expressed to us, we were horrified. But we've lived to see a different perspective to that. So ultimately, when all else has been done and the Constitutional Court has declared and the mediating team has been there and whatever else has been there, we want to see peace in capital letters in the DRC. The people of the DRC have had the most horrific colonial past, have had a most horrific violent situation for a long, long time. They deserve peace. Whichever way they would propose, we would want to support that. They deserve peace.
Okay. That brings this session to an end.
It brings a very difficult situation to an end, and it just indicates that it's likely to get even worse as we represent the continent on the United Nations Security Council. My request to you, which would also have to do with Kigali indirectly, I take time to prepare to come and brief you. I take time to be as open as it is possible to be open. I request of you, please report accurately. It can only build our relationship. The more open we are, the more affirmed you are, the more information you have, and we would like that kind of relationship. Please do not misrepresent what we say. Fortunately, we record everything that we say, and we're able to put it across. But we don't want a situation where it is not possible to be open with you precisely because your interpretation might be different and lead to headlines that are different. We don't want that. We want you to be as affirmed as possible, know that we are open, know that you can come to us and ask questions, and we will answer them as honestly as possible. We ask you to be honest in your reporting. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Being a Sunday, Kuputo has arranged lunch for you. Please pick up something there. Then we will see you at the end of January. Thank you very much.